What happened to Borland, the California software company that programmed the PC revolution? There was a time when Microsoft had a competitor it genuinely had to worry about. Not Apple, not Google, not Oracle. A software company in Scotts Valley, California called Borland. During the early personal computer years, Borland built many of the tools programmers used to create the software running on millions of PCs. Turbo Pascal, Turbo C, Paradox, Quattro Pro, and later Delphi. For a generation of programmers, the Borland name on a software box meant you were about to build something. Borland grew into one of the largest PC software companies in the world. Contemporary reporting described it as the third biggest PC software company and one of Microsoft's most serious competitors. The man behind it was a French mathematician named Philippe Kahn, who built Borland from almost nothing. Then things went wrong. Borland bought companies, expanded into market after market, fought Lotus in court, fought Microsoft in software, and tried to control databases, spreadsheets, programming languages, and eventually the whole desktop productivity market. While Borland was fighting battles everywhere, Microsoft was changing the battlefield. By the end, the company that helped program the PC revolution sold the developer tools division that made it famous for roughly $23 million. A year later, Borland itself disappeared into another software company. So how did one of the great software companies of the PC era rise so quickly and then almost vanish? This is the story of Borland. Chapter 1. A programmer arrives at the right moment. The story begins in the early 1980s. Personal computers were spreading into homes and offices. IBM had launched the IBM PC. Microsoft was supplying operating systems and programming tools. Lotus was becoming famous for its 1-2-3 spreadsheet, and entire software industries were appearing almost overnight. But programming a computer was still difficult. Professional development tools could be expensive, complicated, and slow. A programmer might write code in one program, quit it, run a compiler, wait while the computer processed the source code, link everything together, and only then find out whether the program worked. Philippe Kahn saw an opportunity. Kahn was a French mathematician and programmer who had studied in Europe before moving to California, and in 1982 he founded Borland. The Computer History Museum records Kahn as Borland's founder, and says he stayed on as chief executive for roughly 12 years, during which the company became a global leader in professional development tools. Borland needed a breakthrough product, and it arrived in 1983, Turbo Pascal. Turbo Pascal combined programming tools into an integrated environment and became famous for compiling programs extraordinarily fast for its era. Just as important, Borland priced it aggressively. Instead of treating professional programming tools as expensive products for corporations, Borland put powerful development software within reach of ordinary programmers, students, and small companies. Suddenly, a programmer sitting alone with a personal computer had tools that would previously have seemed far more expensive and complicated. That decision changed Borland, and it helped change PC programming. Chapter 2. Turbo Pascal. Turbo Pascal carried a philosophy. Programming tools should be fast, they should be affordable, and they should remove as much friction as possible between an idea and a working program. At the center of the technology was Anders Heilsberg, who became one of Borland's most important engineers. The result was an environment where programmers could write code, compile it, and test it with remarkable speed. In today's world of powerful laptops, instant code completion, and cloud development environments, that sounds ordinary. In 1983, it was new. Turbo Pascal became a major success and made Borland one of the most recognizable names in software development. The company followed it with more development products and utilities. Borland wasn't merely selling programs. It was selling productivity to the people who created programs. That distinction mattered. Every new personal computer created one more potential software customer, but every new programmer could create hundreds or thousands of additional software products. Borland was selling picks and shovels during the PC gold rush. Business grew fast. The company expanded into C programming tools, entered databases, built productivity software, and launched Sidekick, a popular personal information utility. By the beginning of the 1990s, Borland was no longer a small programming tools company. It had become an empire, and empires tend to look for territory. Chapter 3. The Borland Empire. Borland's ambitions kept growing. The company developed Paradox, a database product. Then came Quattro, followed by Quattro Pro, which competed directly with Lotus, 123, and Microsoft Excel. Borland now had programming tools, databases, and spreadsheets. Khan wasn't known for behaving like a cautious corporate executive, and Borland developed an aggressive culture. Employees sometimes called themselves the Borland Barbarians. The company competed fiercely with Microsoft, with Lotus, and with Symantec. The software industry of the late 1980s and early 1990s was starting to resemble a land grab, with every major company wanting control of the programs on the user's desktop. Borland believed it could be one of the winners. For a while, that belief didn't seem unreasonable. By 1991, Borland reported fiscal year revenue of more than $226 million and profit of almost $27 million. It employed around 1,000 people and owned major products including Paradox, Quattro Pro, and its Pascal development tools. Borland had gone from ambitious startup to one of the most important companies in PC software. This was also the moment when its greatest strength started working against it. Borland had learned that aggressive expansion worked, so it decided to expand again, this time on a much larger scale. Chapter 4. Borland goes after a giant. In 1991, Borland announced one of the biggest deals in its history. It would acquire Ashton Tate, the company behind dBase, one of the most important database products of the early PC era. The deal was valued at approximately $439 million. On paper, the logic looked sound. Borland already had Paradox. Ashton Tate had millions of dBase users. Together, the companies could build an enormous database business. According to reporting at the time, the combination would have controlled roughly 44% of the PC database market based on the cited market figures. Borland would become bigger and potentially more dangerous to Microsoft. But Borland wasn't buying a healthy competitor. Ashton Tate had been struggling. Its dBase franchise had suffered after the problems around dBase 4. The company had lost money, and employees had left. Now, Borland had to integrate a large organization while deciding what to do with two competing database products. It owned Paradox, and now it also owned dBase. Which one would get priority? Which development team would dominate? Which customers should Borland target? Instead of simplifying Borland's business, the acquisition complicated it. And this was happening just as the PC software industry was going through another transformation. Windows was coming. Chapter 5. Microsoft changes the rules. The transition from DOS to Windows reshaped the software industry. Before, software companies competed on relatively separate territory. A spreadsheet company built spreadsheets. A database company built databases. A tools company built compilers. Microsoft's strategy increasingly connected those markets. Microsoft controlled Windows, sold programming tools, sold Excel, sold Word, and eventually bundled its productivity applications together as Microsoft Office. That combination created an ecosystem. Borland was still fighting individual product battles. Microsoft was fighting an ecosystem war, and Microsoft had another weapon, price. Contemporary reports describe Microsoft cutting the prices of its development tools, forcing Borland to respond. That hurt. because development tools had been Borland's most profitable home territory. Now, Microsoft could use its enormous Windows ecosystem to make its own programming products more attractive. Borland was also fighting Lotus. In 1990, Lotus sued Borland over Quattro Pro's compatibility with Lotus 123's menu commands. The case dragged on for years. Borland eventually prevailed after an appeals court ruled in its favor, and the U.S. Supreme Court split 4-4 in 1996, which left the lower court result standing without setting a nationwide precedent. Borland survived the legal battle, but by then the spreadsheet war itself was becoming almost irrelevant. Excel was taking over. The enemy wasn't another spreadsheet anymore. The enemy was Microsoft Office. Chapter 6. The Empire Starts Shrinking. By the mid-1990s, Borland had built an impressive collection of technology, but owning great products didn't mean owning the market. Consumers were moving toward integrated software suites. Microsoft could sell Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other applications together. Borland attempted its own Office strategy, but building a competitive suite while also maintaining programming languages, databases, and other development products required more focus and money than it had. Borland began retreating. In 1994, Novell agreed to buy Borland's Quattro Pro spreadsheet business for approximately $145 million. The message was clear. Borland could not fight Microsoft everywhere at once. It needed to return to its strongest territory, developer tools, but the financial pressure and strategic confusion had already taken a toll. Then came perhaps the most symbolic moment in Borland's history. In January 1995, Philippe Kahn resigned as CEO after years in which Borland had grown from a startup into one of the PC industry's most influential software companies. Reporting at the time pointed to the difficult Ashton Tate acquisition, the broad expansion, and a brutal price war as major pressures on the company. The founder, who had declared war on the software establishment, was leaving the company he created. Strangely, at almost exactly the same time, Borland produced one of the best products in his history. Chapter 7. Delphi. On February 14, 1995, Borland released Delphi, a rapid application development environment designed to make building Windows applications dramatically easier. Programmers could visually design interfaces, connect applications to databases, and write compiled Object Pascal code behind them. It combined the speed of Borland's compiler heritage with the increasingly visual world of Windows development. Once again, Anders Hejlsberg played a central role. Embarcadero's official history of Delphi traces the launch to Borland's Scotts Valley headquarters and credits the Borland development team that released Delphi in February 1995. Many professional programmers loved Delphi. Companies built accounting systems with it, along with database applications, business software, industrial programs, and utilities. Entire companies were built around Delphi development. The irony is hard to miss. Borland could still build extraordinary development technology. What it could no longer do consistently was turn that technology into lasting corporate dominance. It had talented engineers, powerful products, and loyal customers. Microsoft had something Borland did not: control of the platform. Microsoft's developer ecosystem kept getting stronger. Visual Basic became enormously popular. Visual C++ expanded, and Microsoft would eventually launch the .NET platform. One of the people central to that future was Hejlsberg himself, who left Borland for Microsoft and went on to become the lead architect of C#. The talent that had built Borland's greatest programming tools was now building Microsoft's next generation. Chapter 8. Borland becomes Enprise. By the late 1990s, Borland was trying to reinvent itself. The company wanted to move beyond traditional programming tools and become a major player in enterprise software and middleware. and management believed the Borland name was too closely tied to its old identity. So in 1998, Borland changed its corporate name to Enprise. The word was meant to suggest a mix of integration and enterprise computing. Management wanted investors and large corporations to understand that this was no longer just the company that made Turbo Pascal. The rebranding created a new problem. Borland was one of the most famous names in software development, and management was voluntarily walking away from it. Reporting from the time said the name change was part of a major strategy shift toward middleware and enterprise customers after years of falling sales and losses. But for many developers, the products were still Borland products. Borland Delphi, Borland C++ Builder, Borland J Builder. The company had changed its identity, while its strongest remaining customer loyalty was attached to the identity it was trying to leave behind. Management eventually recognized the problem, and the Borland name returned. But something had changed. Borland was no longer setting the direction of personal computing. It was trying to find a profitable place in a world increasingly controlled by much larger companies. Chapter 9. The core of Borland is sold. During the 2000s, Borland moved further toward enterprise software and application lifecycle management, focusing on tools that helped organizations manage the development process rather than the environments developers used to write code. That left an uncomfortable question. What should it do with Delphi, C++ Builder, J Builder, and the other developer products that had defined the company? In 2006, Borland reorganized those products into a unit called CodeGear, then looked for a buyer. Think about what that meant. Borland was preparing to sell the business that made Borland famous. Turbo Pascal had created the company, and Delphi had kept its technical reputation alive. Now those products were being cut loose. In 2008, Embarcadero Technologies agreed to buy CodeGear. The price announced at the time was roughly $23 million. Industry reporting called it a fire sale price and described the transaction as Borland's official exit from the developer tools business. The tools survived. Delphi continued, and so did C++ Builder. The technology lived on. The company that created them had one chapter left. Chapter 10. The End of Borland. In 2009, the British enterprise software company Micro Focus moved to acquire Borland. After negotiations and an increased offer, Borland accepted a deal valued at approximately $113 million. The transaction closed in July 2009. That was effectively the end. A company that had once stood among the giants of PC software, challenged Microsoft, and educated generations of developers with its programming tools was absorbed into another corporation. There was no dramatic bankruptcy, no overnight shutdown, no single catastrophic product that destroyed everything. Borland disappeared through something quieter: strategic drift, acquisitions, platform changes, price competition, corporate restructuring, asset sales, and finally acquisition. The Borland name slowly became a piece of software history. Micro Focus itself was acquired by OpenText in 2023, and OpenText today lists Borland among Micro Focus's previous acquisitions. But Borland didn't completely die. Its DNA escaped. Chapter 11. Borland's ghost is still alive. Delphi still exists. C++ Builder still exists. Embarcadero continues developing and selling them decades after their Borland origins, and the official Delphi history now stretches from Delphi 1 in 1995 through modern versions, targeting Windows and other platforms. Borland's influence goes further than its surviving products. The idea behind Turbo Pascal, that programming tools should make the cycle from writing code to running software extremely fast, feels completely normal today. Integrated development environments, fast compilation, visual application development, reusable software components, affordable professional tools. Borland helped push all of those ideas into mainstream personal computing. Then there is Anders Heilsberg, whose work connects two eras, first Turbo Pascal and Delphi at Borland, then C# and major language work at Microsoft. In a strange way, pieces of Borland helped shape the company that defeated it. Microsoft won the corporate battle, but Borland helped shape the programming culture that survived afterward. Conclusion: what really killed Borland? The easy answer would be that Microsoft killed it. That's too simple. Microsoft was certainly a devastating competitor. It controlled Windows, it could bundle software, it could cut prices, and it could build an enormous developer ecosystem around its own platform. But Borland made decisions that left it exposed. It expanded far beyond its original strength, bought Ashton Tate for hundreds of millions of dollars, and fought simultaneously in databases, spreadsheets, productivity software, and programming tools while running expensive legal and competitive battles. When the industry shifted toward integrated platforms and suites, Borland found itself defending too many territories at once. There's a business lesson in that. Companies often believe growth means adding more products, more acquisitions, more markets. Sometimes the thing that makes a company extraordinary is surprisingly narrow. Borland's magic was simple. It understood programmers, and it knew how to take complicated development technology and make it faster, cheaper, and easier to use. Turbo Pascal embodied that in 1983. Delphi embodied it again 12 years later. Whenever Borland focused on that mission, it produced remarkable technology. Whenever it tried to become everything at once, the company became harder to control. Eventually, the empire was worth less than the legend it had created. Today, millions of people use computers without ever hearing the name Borland. They know Microsoft, Apple, Google, maybe Oracle. But during the earliest years of the PC revolution, programmers knew another name extremely well. A company in California building tools for people who wanted to make computers do something new, bold enough to challenge Microsoft, whose software helped programmers build the PC era. The corporation disappeared and the name faded, but some of the ideas Borland unleashed became so successful that the rest of the software industry simply absorbed them. Maybe that's the strangest possible ending for a technology company. Borland lost the war, but parts of the world it was fighting to create became the world we use today.